Welcome back to Cheddar's Opening Bell, everyone. The world of esports has exploded in popularity, and the primary beneficiaries, teenage boys, raking in millions of dollars in prize money. As HBO's Sports with Bryant Gumbel returns for a new episode tomorrow, esteemed journalist Soledad O'Brien dove deep into this story, and right now I'm joined by Soledad herself. Soledad, it's great to see you. I'm really excited to view this myself. Why was this phenomenon a story that you really wanted to cover?
Yeah, sometimes I seem to get assigned a lot of the esports stories for real sports. And I think we were very interested in what was happening in the middle of a pandemic when many other sports were inaccessible or just slowly coming back. You could see very clearly that Twitch was up 35% and that many people migrated to not just playing games online, but also to watching their favorite gamers online. And so we were interested in seeing how much this business has grown and changed over time, and it's massively. The Fortnite World Cup, actually, you know what, Kristen, I'm going to ask you. The guy who won the Fortnite's World Cup in 2019, how much money did he win, would you guess? Just throw out a number.
I'm going to guess $1 million. How did I do?
$3 million.
Wow.
In fact, there were 7 teenage boys who became millionaires overnight from this game.
Incredible. I mean, how are they dealing with that, Soledad? I'm sure obviously they love gaming, that's why they're good at it, but coming into that much money at a young age, doing what you love, how are they dealing with that?
Yeah, it's interesting. For a lot of the kids we interviewed, their parents both supported their gaming. Their dads, in many cases, were gamers and played with their kids when they were very, very little. So I think for the kids that I interviewed, they definitely had a lot of parental kind of hands-on. But you have the issue of swatting, which obviously is when a competitor might call a SWAT team on you by making up a story saying that something terrible is happening at your house so that it knocks you either out of a competition or off of your stream. And sometimes, in fact, if the SWAT team bursts in, you can capture it, you can see it happening on the stream. That's happened to all the young men that I interviewed. And also the challenge is by the time you're 20, you're old. You're like potentially washed up. And I do think it raises a serious question about like, what do you do when your height of your career is 13 and you're pretty good at 16 and 17, but looking down the pike a few years could be really problematic. So on one hand, tons and tons of money, and the money's insane. But on the other hand, what happens to these kids who are trying to figure out how to navigate a world where either people love your stream or, kind of goes cold.
And it's interesting because, we watch the ratings, right, for the NFL, the NBA. Everyone, it seems like, is talking about that, especially now. Not as many people, I guess, in your average household might be talking about esports. But I think by all means, Soledad, I'd love to get your take. This is a real sport. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a real sport. And I think the reason that people don't really talk about it is because they're doing it, right? I think the people who are into esports would say they go and game and they go and jump on a stream with their favorite star. He might be 16 years old, and it really is it's young men for the most part. And then they can actually interact with them, right, in a way that you're not going to do with your favorite football player. You're not going to do with your friend, your favorite NBA all-star. It's just not going to happen. But in this case, actually, you can do that. And I think that's made a big difference. The guy who's kind of the agent to a lot of these streamers and a lot of these gamers said, he used to be at Capitol Records. His name's Lee Trink. And he said, I used to represent celebrities and stars. The kids I have now are so much more famous among their peer set than any of the people I was repping years ago when I worked at Capitol Records.
In terms of the peak, you mentioned it's roughly 13 years old for a lot of these young gamers. Do they understand that? How do they sort of map out? Are they just taking this day by day and enjoying the ride? Or are they literally thinking, coming up with a plan, a business plan as to how to continue making money on this in the years to come?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a combination of both, right? You have people who are just good at competitions. And so what they're doing is they're competing and trying to win money. Then you have people who are good, maybe not the best, and so they stream and they become more like entertainers. That's a matter of, I need to grow my following because that grows my advertising, that grows my sponsorship dollars, but that also means you need to stream. I mean, most of these kids, guys, are streaming 6, 7, 8 hours a day. That's a full-time job. So I think they fully understand the business mode of it, and that the clock is ticking, that at a certain time they'll just slow down. They just won't be as good. And so for many, I mean, there's a young man who I interviewed, actually went to my high school, which was fun to talk to him about, and he makes $400,000 a year, and he's streaming. He's really entertaining the people who follow him, right? I mean, he's not really into the competitions. He makes way more money than his mom and dad makes, and he's trying to figure out how he can retire early and not have to work.
You also recently launched a show, Soledad, called Matter of Fact, speaking about racial and social injustice. What has been the feedback so far? And personally, for you, what has the experience been like doing this show?
Yeah, it's great. We used to do for my show Matter of Fact, which is like a Sunday morning show that looks at politics and policy. We decided to launch a listening tour, mostly because we're all remote and all we could really do was dial people in and have these conversations. And so the Matter of Fact listening tour was digital only. And it's been amazing to have conversations about race and opportunity and access, all framed around bias. Like, what is bias? How does your brain think about bias? How do we deal with people who seem different than us? How do we deal with people who are in our same group, and how our brain likes that one and doesn't like the other? And so it's been a fascinating conversation to talk about bias and discrimination and prejudice and racism, and really define those terms, and talk to some of the biggest, the foremost leaders kind of in the field of understanding these issues, plus also people who've had many experiences where they've been screamed at and called the N-word or whatever, caught on a viral video, and discussing how that happens and why those things happens was a really fascinating hour. That piece, by the way, which was all digital, will be turned around and be available in prime time probably in the next couple of months.
All right, Soledad, we will be watching. Such a pleasure to speak with you. That's broadcast
Pleasure's
journalist
mine.
Soledad O'Brien. Wonderful. And a reminder to our viewers that HBO's Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel returns for an all-new episode tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, where you can watch Soledad's newest piece.